Welcome to the 1871 podcast, and our special guest for this episode is former Reading midfielder Ray Houghton. So, Ray, thank you for being our guest, and a very warm welcome to the show to you.
Pleasure to be on, lads.
Really appreciate you joining us, Ray. And just by way of a little introduction, before you joined Reading in 1997, you'd already played for West Ham, Fulham, Oxford United, Liverpool, Aston Villa, Crystal Palace, and of course the Republic of Ireland. You won 2 league titles and 2 FA Cups with Liverpool. You won the League Cup with Oxford United and Aston Villa. You scored in the 1-0 win against England at the 1988 Euros in Germany. And then, of course, at Italia 90, you were part of the Irish team that beat Romania to reach the quarterfinals, and you scored in the penalty shootout. And then at the 1994 World Cup, we all remember that goal. You scored that fantastic goal to beat Italy. So many highlights in your playing career, Ray, but when you look back, how do you feel about what you achieved in your playing career?
Yeah, I mean, listen, when you come from where I did, in the sense that, when I was 11 years old, I used to play for Islington Boys. And part of the deal when you played for Islington is you trained at Arsenal on either a Tuesday or a Thursday with the young players that Arsenal were bringing through. So that was a great experience. My problem was when I was 11, I was 4'4". When I was 12, I was 4'4.5". And when I was 13, I was 4'5". I just didn't grow. And, we had some really good players at Islington at the time. I mean, I played with Chrissy White, who played for Arsenal and Leeds United, and Chrissy Ramsey. I mean, Chrissy went on to play in the FA Cup final for Brighton against Manchester United. And he's been a manager recently and been involved with England and one thing and another. So had a good upbringing as far as that was concerned. But it was tough because I was so small. I never grew. So my chances of making it were pretty slim until I got an opportunity to go to West Ham.
Ray, you still there?
Still there. I don't know how. I just went off for
okay.
a brief second. I got a chance to go to West Ham. It was actually through a friend of mine, Dennis Phillips. Dennis and I were at school together, played in the same school team, played for the same Islington district team. And the scout for West Ham had seen Dennis playing, couldn't believe how good he was. He wasn't with the club. And completely out of the blue, he just said to him, "Is there anyone else like you?" And he mentioned me. And that was my bit of good fortune to get to West Ham. And once you get an opportunity like that, you got to seize it. You really got to give it everything you've got. And that's what I tried to do for every club that I was at, starting at West Ham. I felt I was very unlucky there. I was there for 3 seasons. My last season, I actually scored 19 goals from midfield, and I got a free transfer at the end of the season, which probably today would be unheard of, but that was the way it was. There was a lot of competition for places for the youngsters, but it ended up being a blessing in disguise. My career moved on from there.
And then obviously, I mentioned some of the big highlights: Republic of Ireland, Liverpool. You won the FA Cup. You won the league twice, the FA Cup twice. If I say to you, what was your highlight, we might still be here in sort of a couple of hours. But, for you, Ray, out of all of those kind of highlights, which one do you pick out in terms of the one that you're most proud of? Was it was it playing for Ireland? Was it playing for Liverpool? Was it winning trophies? What was it?
Yeah, all them things are very great along the way as far as your career is concerned. But signing for West Ham, when I did, that's the greatest thing. To realise your dream from a very young age. I wanted to be a professional footballer. I didn't think it was going to happen. I was working for J&B Whiskey in London, just Arini and Brooks. I was shipping wine to all over Britain and over to the USA and Canada. That was my job. I'd done it for about 6 months. I hated it, but I'd done it because I didn't know where I was going to be. So when you get your chance to be a professional footballer, and it's only the start, that's where so many youngsters go wrong, I feel, in football today. It's because once they sign a professional contract, they think they've made it. They haven't. You're just on the first rung of the ladder. That's it. You know, it's now up to you. You've been given an opportunity. You've got to seize it. You've got to take your chance. You've got to be ready for that. And it's only the start, very, very start of it. And it's how you manage that and how you progress from there, which is the important thing. And you must give it 100% every day. That's what I've done. I found it tough when I first started because I wasn't used to training daily. You know, that wasn't something I'd ever come up against. And let me tell you, in the 20-year career I had, I didn't work as hard anywhere else apart from West Ham. That was the hardest training I've ever came across. You know, when I look at that compared to what I used to do at Liverpool, Liverpool was a walk in the park. You just hardly done anything. At West Ham, we ran and we ran and we ran and we ran and we ran. And that was the ethics of it. You know, there was a lot of running involved. There was a lot of physical things that went on with the training at West Ham. And as a youngster, I would train Monday morning, Monday afternoon, Tuesday morning, Tuesday afternoon, Wednesday morning, Wednesday afternoon. And I was a pro. I wasn't an apprentice. I was a professional. And I still had to do the jobs of an apprentice. So getting in early, folding the kit up, going to the training ground, getting all the kit out for the first teamers, you know, making their tea, cleaning their boots, doing everything afterwards when they had finished at lunchtime, going back to the stadium afterwards, putting all the kit away and getting it ready for the next day, getting home at 7, 8 o'clock at night, and then you were up again the next morning to start all over again. So it wasn't what I would call, you know, like the lovely lifestyle that some youngsters might have today because they don't have to do the jobs. But it grounded you. It got you prepared for what was real and what wasn't.
And then after all of those highlights that I mentioned, of course, you signed for Reading. That was back in the summer of '97. And you played, I think your first season was at Elm Park and then the Medeski Stadium. That's right, isn't it?
Yeah.
You scored 1 goal for Reading, which, believe it or not, for the newer Reading fans, was in a 3-0 win for Reading against Manchester City. Yes,
I was there. I remember
that
it well.
really happened. Johnny was there. And that was 25 years ago. So that was February 98. Lee Hodges and Carla Saba also scored for Reading that day. Ray, can you remember that game? What do you remember about that game?
No, I don't. But I tell you the game I do remember. We went to Manchester City. I think obviously it must have been the same season, and I think we drew up there. I think they went down to 10 men though, and we ended up drawing the game. I remember coming in and I was absolutely distraught that we hadn't won it. And some of the lads were in the shower, and this is how vivid I can remember. And they were sort of, you know, well, hey, whoa, you know, we got a draw today. And I was throwing my boots on the floor, and I was absolutely disgusted. And they were sort of looking at me if I was a bit nuts and saying, well, why are you acting like that? And I said, well, look, in principle, before the game, if you'd have said to me, you know, if you get a point, would it be a good result? I would have said yes. But the fact that they went down to 10 men, we've got to change our attitude during the course of the game. It's now there to be won. So if we don't win it, I think it's a disappointment. It's not a good point in the end. We should have got all 3 points. And that's what I didn't like about the attitude at the time. And maybe it came back from my background, you know, where I'd been, where it was like a winning mentality. You got to go and win it. And we were in a real situation as far as, you know, trying to stay up. It was a tough season. You know, Terry brought me into the club, and then there was a change. Alan Pardew was in there for a week, and then Tommy Burns, and Tommy's got a different way of playing. Tommy wants to, you know, change the whole attitude of the club, if you like, completely from top to bottom. So, you know, it was a difficult season. I wish I came to personally. I wish I came to Reading earlier, you know, because I've came at the back end of my career, you know, at the front end of it, and I wish I could have had a bit more influence over the lads that were there. You know, if I was a bit younger, because I was very outspoken, and I would like to have come a bit earlier and maybe influenced a bit more and try to help the lads that were there, because there were some good youngsters. I was just going through some of the lads that were there. There was some really great lads, and I tell you what, training wise, excellent. You know, fitness wise, these lads put in 100% every day. I remember the old gym at Elm Park, which I've got to be honest with you, wasn't very good. It wasn't very modern, but they made the most of it. And when we went to the new stadium and the gym that was there, I remember we used to have on the rowing machine, and we used to put up the results. And it was a bit of a battle who could get the best records, you know. So you're in there, and I can't remember what it was. It was either for 500 meters or 1,000 meters. What the quickest time was. When you put it up with the board, and everyone was trying to beat it, from Parky to Andy Bernal. All these boys were a bit fitness fanatics, but even the old boy here, I was having a go at it as well, because I love that. I love that attitude. So that was the thing I would take away from my time at Reading, was being at the old stadium and what that brought. It was an old-fashioned stadium, so I liked that. I enjoyed that. But then you move to this modern, brand new, state-of-the-art stadium, which was absolutely incredible. It was absolutely phenomenal with everything that had there. And then with Tommy in charge, trying to change things around, try to change the style of play. It was interesting. So it was like the old stadium with the old style of football, new stadium, new style of football. I think that's the best way to sum it up.
Yeah, Johnny, gonna bring you in now.
Yeah, I was going to say, Ray, do you remember that day? I think it was the Magnificent Seven came in on transfer deadline with Tommy.
Yeah.
That was absolute mad, wasn't it? that time in the season. But what was he like as a manager? Because we've had a few other players come on and say nothing but great things about him as a person. What was he like for you?
Sorry, I'm back, lads. I don't know what's happening. I just keep switching off. I'm not touching a button. I'm not very good with it. I'm just standing here holding. No,
saying that. What was Tommy like to play for, Ray? I mean, you've worked under some amazing coaches, Jack Charlton, Dalglish, and everyone says such nice things about the late great Tommy. What was he like?
Yeah, I mean, Tommy, and obviously you had Stevie Keane. Stevie had been at the club and now had elevated to first team coach with Packy Bonner. So there's a good backroom staff. They wanted to play a different style of football. They wanted to pass the ball out, but I got that. I got the way they were trying to play. But I think there's times when you try to change it too quickly. There was it was like an evolution. You know what I mean? It was like, here we are, lads. We're playing this.
Oh, we keep losing Ray. Hopefully, he'll be back in a second. You still there, Ray? Johnny, what do you remember about Ray's time at Reading?
I remember those 2 seasons, and it was the bit of a disaster at Elm Park, and then obviously Ray's coming towards the end of his career, but I can imagine trying to work with some of the players that we had at the time when you've been at that level would be very difficult, and under Terry Bullivant was a difficult time, and then Tommy coming in when we're pretty much all the way ready going to be relegated. So it kind of, and then, the expectations with the new ground, Tommy Burns, because of his reputation in football, you're thinking, it's going to start well, but it didn't really get going. And I think, like Ray was saying there, it was trying to implement something that just maybe too much too soon for players that aren't at that level. But hopefully Ray's back. Is he there? Are you there, Ray? There he is.
Sorry, boys. I don't know what's going on. I have absolutely no idea.
Oh, we were talking about you in your absence. So
no, all right, you're fine. You can call me all the names you like.
No.
No, that's okay. No, obviously, Johnny touched on it just there while you, while we were waiting for you to come back, Ray. And thanks for coming back. So your first season ended in relegation from what is now the Championship, and the following season you finished 11th, first season at the Madacey Stadium. Did you get the feeling at that time with the new stadium and everything else that was going on that Reading were at the start of something special? Is that the feeling that you got?
Yeah, I think with the new stadium, and it's great for the fans. To come, with all due respect to the old stadium, I don't think it was user friendly. If you were bringing your children there or your wife, I'm not sure it would have been something you would have said, "Oh, that's great to go and view from." It had its merits. I loved it. Because, as I say, I like old stadiums. But there's no doubt modern stadiums and what they bring when it comes to toilets, for example, good view all around the stadium, places to go and eat. It was absolutely different class from that point of view. You did actually feel a bit special coming to the ground. You as a player, there was a pride in where you played. The stadium that you were playing in, your home stadium. You were like, oh yeah. But the only problem with that is every other team that came and played against you were like, oh, isn't it nice to play here today? It looks a lovely place. Pitch was always in good order, so yeah, it was. You could sense that there was something changing. You mentioned, I think, John, when you said about Tommy bringing in 7 players on deadline day. I mean, that was tough. It was tough for the players that were there, and it was tough for the players coming in. They hadn't a clue. We didn't know much about them and the style of football they were going to bring to the club. So that was tough, really tough for everyone concerned. And you've got a group who were tight knit as we were. We didn't have a large squad, but all of a sudden now we have, because we've got 7 new additions that have been added in there, and it's how you gel together as a group. And that can be quite tough at times as well. To the old players to say, "Come in, lads, you're going to take my positions or whatever." But hey ho, this is how it goes. It was that from that side of things. I felt it was a little bit tough on the players that were there. But that was Tommy's prerogative as manager to do what he wanted to do, or he felt which was right for the club at that particular time. It was just the style of football that changed, and how the players had to adapt to that the following season, which was interesting. But you knew. It was in good hands with Tommy. Tommy was a football man. He knew the game inside out, and he actually was very good to work with. As a coach. He always wanted to explain that. I can even picture him in my head now. I think we went down to Bournemouth for a get together, and I was a little bit late. I think I had to go to your funeral, so I got. He said to me, "Come down afterwards, but I want you part of the group." So I remember going down there, and everyone else was allowed to go out that night. And I got down there, I think it was quite late, about 10:30 or thereabouts. And Tommy was in the bar, and he didn't drink much, Tommy. I know, even if he was a drinker, but then he just sat down and he was getting these like salt and pepper little dishes out. And what happens if he goes there, Ray, and he pushes up there? And I'm sitting there thinking, I've just came for a funeral. I'm not in the best of form. I want to go out with the lads because I want to get alongside them. And he must have had me in the bar for about an hour and a half, just going through tactics of where these little glasses should go and salt and pepper things. But it just showed you the intensity of him and his love and passion for the game and how much he wanted to be a success at the club.
How difficult was it for you, Ray? I know you say you're coming towards the end of your career, but you're playing. No disrespect to the players that we had at the time, but they weren't at the level that you used to at Liverpool, Republic of Ireland. How difficult is that for you transitioning at that stage?
It was very difficult for me. I've spoken to other players about this, players that are, who dropped down the divisions. And I used to ask the question, how did you find that? And some of them would say quite easy. And most of them were defenders, because defenders, you're always playing the ball forward, but when you're a midfield player, when the ball comes into and you get turned on it, there'll be certain areas you'd be expecting players to run into.
Yeah.
So when I would get the ball, I expect my right back to moving further up the field to be an option to give him the ball.
Oh, we've lost Ray again temporarily. Hopefully he's coming back in a second.
Sorry, I don't know what's going on. This is ridiculous.
That's okay. Don't worry.
The Wi-Fi in Ireland, we blame it. It's bad down here as well.
Well, all I'd say on it was
oh, he's gone again. When he comes back, Johnny, I'm going to ask him. He mentioned Parky, Phil Parkinson. He mentioned a few other players, and how he liked the attitude and the competitiveness, all that sort of thing. So hopefully, we're getting him back. He's obviously got
there we go.
One or two issues with the Wi-Fi.
I'm still here.
It's T. Ray Houghton's now.
Yeah, I'm still here.
Ray, you mentioned about players that you played with, and you like the attitude, and you mentioned Phil Parkinson.
Yeah.
Which players sort of stood out for you at Reading at your time at the club?
Technically, the players like Darren Caskey. Cask was, and he picked up that horrific injury. Remember, I think he broke his leg, didn't he? When we really needed him, and I think he was a huge loss for us. Darren was someone who had good vision. You could see a pass. A bit like me, I'd like to have seen Trevor Morley a bit younger. Trevor was someone that had great quality, and I think his first couple of seasons at Reading he done supremely well. But then obviously there's a change in the guard. Carl Asaba comes in. I mean, Carl came in from Brentford, and he came in for, I would say, big money at that time. Carl had a huge future, and he was our top goal scorer in his first full season. He was someone that had potential to elevate himself. He had genuine pace. He for his height, he's decent in the air. But for a midfield, he was great because you could play balls in behind. You know, you could stretch the game for you. So he was something. And then with Martin Williams, I think Martin didn't really realise his full potential. Martin had real quality. You know, he was a good dribbler, could run at people, strong as an ox, could hold people off. But to me, he just never got enough out of his game. He wasn't, you know, you'd be like 8 out of 10 one week, and then 4, then 7, and then 5, and then 9, and then 4. You know, like, what's happening one week to the next? What's going on? And I couldn't work it out. And I'm sure must have been difficult for him as a player not to have worked out why he couldn't do it on a more consistent basis. When Meeks on the wing, he's another one. Meeks was always looked good, you know, and he could cross the ball. Which Stewie Lovell. Stewie was a good finisher, good lad. He had a bit of quality about him. Lambo on the wing, Jamie on the wing. He's another one potentially running at people. I don't know on his background and what the problems were with Jamie. Not living in the area, so I lived in Houghton where I live now, which was quite a drive away. So over my way was Trevor, Morley, Lee Hodges, Linvoy Primus, Darren Caskey. So we used to travel in together. So we had a sort of a bond. But I didn't really know the other lads as well because I didn't live in that area. I wished I did a little bit because you would have got to know them a bit more and what they were about, and maybe you could have influenced that a little bit more. But yeah, there were some good lads there, some good players, and then at the back we had Big Barry Hunter, didn't we? Which Andy Banal. I mean, Andy was a fitness fanatic, wasn't he? He was unbelievable. Great lad as well. I enjoyed Andy's company. We had Boots before he left, and then the new players that come in that was brought into the club. You know, there was some talented. Stewie Gray, educated left foot. Stewie had plenty of ability about him. Yeah, so there were some good players there.
Linvoy Primus came in as well.
Sorry, Jonathan.
Linvoy Primus came in, didn't he, at that time as well?
Yeah, Linvoy. Yeah, so I said he used to travel in with me, Linvoy and Lee Hodges. You know, so there was plenty of players there. Sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
And when you're with Terry in charge, right? I mean, I think we started off quite well. I think, but then after Christmas, it kind of just went pear-shaped. It's hard to say now, but what do you think changed in the way things were? You know, because he was new as a coach, wasn't he?
Yeah, we had Alan alongside him, Terry and Al, and they were great. I used to like their sessions. They were always inventive. You know, there was always they were trying to work on things to improve the lads. I mean, the training ground was good. You know, I didn't mind the training ground. It's good facilities. That wasn't a problem. I don't know. I don't know if we stopped believing in ourselves. I don't know if you know, over that, when the weather changed, you know, and the pitches weren't as good. Because I remember playing in a couple of matches at the Old Elm Park when it was actually frozen. I mean, it was like rock solid. And why we were playing, I haven't got a clue. But back then you did, you know, you got on with it. Maybe one or two key players were injured at the wrong time. I couldn't put my finger on it exactly, John, exactly where it went wrong. But it's a bit like Leicester at the minute, or, you know, a team that you don't think is going to come down quickly. And all of a sudden you're in this rut of you can't win, or you can't, you know, you lose 2, you draw 2, you win 1. And then that's the sort of formation you're in, you know, the run of games that you're in, and we just couldn't get ourselves out of it. And look, you mentioned my record there, lads. Look, 1 goal was absolutely dreadful from our point. And when I look back and I think, wasn't I shooting? You know, didn't I have a strike at goal? Wasn't I getting forward? So all the things that you would question, and keeping the ball and coming back. And I was trying to say that, you know, you come back, you try to get on the ball when players are not moving into position, and maybe from myself, my own point of view, I was getting a bit frustrated, and then I wasn't doing the things that I should have been doing. Maybe at times the manager kicked me in when he shouldn't have done, and maybe changed it around and brought someone else in. But with Darren being out, that was a huge loss as well. You know, we missed his creativity, we missed his spark in the middle of the park. Someone who could see a pass and, you know, get us a little bit higher up the pitch, and maybe there were just things like that that generally go against you. So there was some reasons why it didn't quite work out, but I couldn't definitively tell you exactly. And that's what happens in football. You just get in a bit of a rut. Confidence starts to go quite quickly. The belief isn't quite there. And you start losing games and you're not winning and the pressure's on you. You go into matches and you're thinking, oh, we need to win today. And that brings an added pressure before you've even kicked a ball.
And Ray, just wanted to ask you about Alan Pardew. Obviously, went on to manage several other clubs after Reading. What did you see in him, as a leader, if you like, as somebody who could kind of galvanise the team, that sort of thing? What did you spot in him?
I would say
well, we've got to wait in anticipation for Ray's answer. Yeah.
Luckily, what I'd say about anyone who was at the club at that time and seen Alan work with the reserves, and that's one of the hardest jobs because you've got the youngsters coming up from the youth team who've just come out of the youth team, so you've got to keep them in check, and then you've got the players coming out of the first team who all think they should be in the first team, and they might not have the best of attitudes going into the reserves. So now you've got to work with that. I thought Alan was brilliant. His coaching sessions were always very, very good. You could tell straight away he was a proper coach. You knew what he was doing. You knew what he wanted to do. And anyone who's seen him work would say that he was going to have a big future in the game. Whether that would have been as a manager or as a coach, I'm not sure. But whatever it was, he was going to do well because his coaching sections was very, very good. I think he spoke very well. He didn't intimidate players. He obviously had to cajole some. He had to give some a pat on the back. He had to give the youngsters the freedom to go and express themselves. And at times that can be one of the hardest jobs at a football club, the reserve team manager, if they have reserve team managers so much to do. But I thought he'd done it really, really well. I was hugely impressed with Alan. And, that reflected on his career. If you look where he went and what he done, I think everyone who would have seen that at Reading with the reserves.
Yeah. And what about yourself, Ray? Did you ever sort of think about management yourself?
Yeah, I mean, we've all got attitudes and we've all got beliefs and we've all got confidence. It is one of my regrets, without a doubt. Without a doubt, it's a regret. I mean, I went in a coaching position at Crystal Palace. Did I make the best of it? Probably not. Have I got regrets about it? Absolutely. I was always someone who thought quite deeply about the game. And even to this day, even when it comes to punditry, I think I don't think it's something you go in here and you have a laugh and a joke about. I think it's a serious thing. I think you're trying to, impart your views to people about how the game should be played and where it might have went wrong. Everyone's got an entitled to opinion, and everyone's entitled to, put across what they think about the game. You should do it in a right and proper way. You should have conviction about what you're saying and believe what you're saying. I'm not one of them ones that, someone will say to me, oh, blah, blah, blah. And then you go, all right, I'll go down that line because you said it. You've got to have your own convictions. You've got to have your own beliefs about how you think the game went. And then you convey that to people. Then it's up to them. Either they accept what you said or they don't. That's perfectly acceptable either way, but you've got to be true to yourself. That's one of the things I say. I try to advise any youngster coming through, whether that's playing wise. And I think there've been too many. I think that's one of the things today. Too many youngsters are told by their friends and their mates, you've had a great game when you've not. And I don't think you're doing them any good. I can assure you, every time I had a bad game, I'd got two older brothers, and the first thing they would say to me, you were dreadful today. It wouldn't be you were average or you were okay today. If I was dreadful, they would tell me, and they would tell me what went wrong.
I'm guessing they might not have used the word dreadful. It might have been something else. But
well, a little bit more. It was a little bit. Yeah, well, it wasn't quite that. But I think you're never going to learn unless people are honest with you. I remember some managers turn around and say, 3 of you have done well today, and 8 of you, I'll tell you what, you've got to think about your game. I guess I'll tell you, all 11 went out there. I think that they were one of the 3. None of them thought they were one of the 8. Because that's how they work. They work in this little bubble of, well, it's not me, it's someone else's fault. Instead of putting your hand up and saying, I was dreadful today. I've come off many times. Like, oh my God, how bad was that today? Couldn't control the ball. Everything, every decision I made was wrong today. If I should have passed it, I was keeping it. You know, if I should have dribbled, I passed the ball off. I remember once the ball went up there and it came off, and I went to control it with my right foot and hit my left, and that probably summed up my day. And I was like, that summed up my performance today. That's how bad it was. But you got to be honest with yourself. And I just think there's so many people that could learn so much in the game by being honest, and family and friends, being honest with them, because that's the only way you're going to learn. And that's where I learned from Terry. That's where I learned from Tommy. You know, they would tell you, you know, what was going on, what you would do, and you know what we've got to do to get better. And hopefully that had an influence on a lot of the younger lads to help them in their careers.
Yeah, Johnny, anything else you want to ask, Ray?
Yeah, I was going just a couple of things. First, I don't know if you still follow, you know, what goes on at Reading at the minute, Ray. I don't know if you've seen, you know, there's possible points deduction again, and just a bit of a mismanagement, to say the least. What do you think of the club at the minute?
Johnny, you know, I'm surprised that, you know, during COVID, I thought it'd be a lot of clubs that went to the wall, to be honest. Yeah. I thought it would have a massive impact on so many lower down the leagues just because of the finances. You know, the amount of money players are getting paid these days. I mean, I hear about, you know, even in League Two, players on £5,000, £6,000. How can you sustain it if you've not got the crowd? I mean, I just, you know, purely on a mathematical basis, you know, if you're only bringing in £3 million and your bills are 5 million, well, you don't have to be a mathematician to work out it ain't going to work. You know, there's a problem, and there's these owners coming in. I'm sure they've got the best of intentions to do well at a club, but you know, we've just seen it at Wigan, isn't it? Most recently, you know, we heard about they not been paid. Was it for five occasions?
Yeah,
where they've been paid late, and they're not going to be the only ones. This is going to happen to, I think, quite a few clubs, because you've got people coming in who might not have business acumen in football. They might have it in other industries, but it seems to be they lose their mind when they come into football. And the decisions that they make in their own industry, they never do in football. They would never give out the money that they do in their own industry. But one of the things they don't realise is players' contracts. You give a player a 4-year deal on X. If you want to get rid of them after 2 weeks, you've got to pay them all that money. And they don't get that. They're like, no. In our world, we don't do that. Yeah. We'll give them 3 months' money and then they can leave. Doesn't happen in professional football. So you need to have the right personnel at a football club, and that's behind the scenes as well as on the pitch, and management. So all that has to come together. It all has to work in the one way. Now, I don't know about the actual crowds at Reading again. I don't look at every club I played at and look at all the you know, the amount of money that they're trying to generate. I look at where they are, what they're doing. I don't always report it. I'm not a great one for social media. I don't go on Twitter and every time someone plays and say, "Oh, look, we done well today," or "We done badly today." You know, I had my time there, and I thoroughly enjoyed my time at every club that I played for. And Reading is certainly one of them players. I've got a lot of time for the club, and it hurts. You know, when you say that they're going through the problems that they've got, it hurts. You know, as an ex-player, I'm thinking, why is that happening? You know, why?
We've lost Ray again temporarily, but
back again. I just think, why is mismanagement going on? You know, there must be money. You know, there must be good people at the club. There must be accountants at the club. And if you're bringing in, you've got a spreadsheet. That's what you're bringing in, and that's your outgoings. Then, if one supersedes the other, so you're not enough coming in one side and you're going too far the other way, then you've got to do something about it. And someone should be looking at that, because at the end of it, the people that hurts the most. It'll hurt the players, of course, because it's their livelihood. But it's the fans. The fan, you're a Reading fan for life. You're a Reading fan for 2 years. That a player is, or 6 months, or 4 years, or whatever the number of years they're at the club. You're a fan for life. So it impacts you, because the club that you love, the club that you support, the club that you talk about virtually every day of the week, to your mates and your, you know, on social media and your WhatsApp groups and everything else. That's the passion you've got for the club. Players will come and go. Managers will come and go. Owners will come and go. But you're the ones that it impacts, because it impacts your lives over a greater period. Whereas for the players, it impacts them for the length of time they've got their contract. And I'm sure, like some players, there'll be ex-players like myself. It's still, you know, you know, you still look at it. You still assess the situation and say, "Oh, isn't it dreadful what's happening at my old club and what's going on there?" But my feelings are for the fans. You know, that's what's, because to me they're the ones, and every club, Doesn't matter what. My local club's Leighton Orient. You know, all my mates are season ticket holders there. So they're always talking to me about Leighton Orient, what's going on, you know, the good and the bad. But it's a fans forum, you know, it's fans that I talk to about it. Don't know any of the players really there and what's going on, if there's any good or bad things going on at the club. And it'd be the same at Reading, you know, it's ex-players who've still got a love of the club, you know, lads that still report on it, lads that work in the media about it, you know, work on the local radio stations.
Oh, Ray's gone again. Johnny, when he comes back, I'm going to ask him, you asked him obviously about the current situation, but I wanted to get his thoughts on, you know, what happened after he left, and obviously Reading went on to have that fantastic season with Steve Coppell. So interesting to see what he makes of that if we do get him back.
Yeah.
Because I think Ray was at the start of obviously the move to the new stadium, and then things started to go really well for Reading after that. Obviously, that first season he was there, relegation.
Yeah.
This must be the most fragmented podcast.
That's okay. Well, at least it's
don't
not
worry.
that much.
You'll have to stitch it together at some point.
We make it up as we go along. So
don't we all?
Exactly.
I was just saying to Johnny there. Obviously, after you left Reading, Reading then went on, you know, a real upturn, and
brilliant.
You know, Madacey Stadium, and then promotion, and then the 106 season. You know, that absolutely magnificent first season in the Premier League. Did you ever, as a kind of recent former Reading player at that time, did you have a sense of pride that you were kind of there at the start of all of that?
Well, I don't think I had much influence over it, but to be honest, Mark, I think it was a lot of other players, a lot of the players and managers and people behind the scenes that done the work to get them in that position. But you know what? The fans in the stadium deserved it. You know, where they were, you know, the support that they were getting. And I absolutely loved that. I mean, I did a few games at the stadium, you know, doing a bit of co-commentary. So I'd come over and see Nicky Hammond and Alan Pardew. You know, sometimes I was critical, sometimes I was very positive about it, but that was my job to do that. The lads didn't always like it when you were critical, because obviously they always want the positivity, but it was great. It was great to see them back, you know, and up in that top division, you know, having, you know, great season, big games. And even now, you know, I like the football that they're trying to play, you know, and then it's always, you're always looking for progression. You're always looking, can you get closer to the top? It's just this season, you know, for whatever it might be the finances. I didn't know the finances were as bad as it was, to be honest. That's a new story to me, and something I hadn't heard, but I will look into that. But you just hope they come through this. All you want is a Reading side that you're proud of, that are, you know, that are being well run, a stadium that you can go and support your team. And listen, the most important thing, I think, is like one of the most important things is the lads give you 100%. That's all you ask for as fans, is attitude, commitment every game. You do that, you're happy. You know, as supporters, obviously you want them to do the best that you can, but as long as they get out there giving it their all, I don't think you can ask for much more as a fan. Personally, that's how I look at my team, Celtic. And I don't, you know, I don't really like observe them as much as I once did when maybe I was a bit younger. But when I watch Celtic, as long as they're applying themselves, that's all I look for. You know, if they go into Europe and they get well beaten in matches, at least as long as they're trying, that's all you want. That's what I look for. Yeah.
Johnny?
Yeah, I just want a side question, right? Just about how do you think the Irish team's doing at the minute under Stephen Kenny and the development of the younger players? And there seem to be more coming back into the Premier League as well now. How do you see it?
Yeah. Look, it's been tough for Stephen. You know, he's been a very tough 3 years. I think it's nearly 3 years now that he's been in charge. He's been trying to change the culture, a bit like Tommy Burns when he came in at Reading. You know, he wanted to try and change the style of football. And it took a while for the lads to get to the level that they're at. I was over for the Latvia game when they won 3-2. There was good signs in that. You know, a lot more positive signs. I think there's some better individuals coming through. Evan Ferguson being one. I think Evan's going to be a star. I think he's going to have a huge future. He's a well-grounded lad, very well balanced, good footballer. You know, he understands the game. He's 18. But But I just hope we don't put too much pressure too soon on his shoulders for someone so young. You know, that you shouldn't be looking at him if he's going to be the way forward, or the way that Thailand are going to change completely. But this, I thought the game against France, the lads played well.
Yeah.
You know, they're good to give a really good account of themselves against, I would say, probably the most informed team in world football. If you look at what they have done over the last 6 years, France, you know, they won the World Cup 4 years ago and got to the final back in December. And you look at what they've done in Europe as well, you know, in the European Championship matches, they've been excellent, been a fabulous side. So to play like we did, very, very good. The only thing that we haven't got at the minute, Jonathan, is, I would say, is that conveyor belt of youngsters coming through.
Yeah.
You know, like so we had Troy Parrott. Troy was a big, you know, player to come through, and it didn't quite work out for Troy. You know, he's at Tottenham. I think he's still at Tottenham. He's on loan at the moment. So there was a lot of pressure on him. That didn't quite work out for him. Now we've got Evan coming through. But when you look at Jason Malumbi, Josh Cullen, there's a lot of lads like 21s, 23s, 24s, 25s. So they're only going to get better the more they play together, and the more that Stephen and his backroom staff keep working with them. But the one thing I get worried about, and it's only from a personal point of view, we're getting used to not qualifying. You know, the last time we qualified was 2016. You know, so it's going to be 8 years next year when the Euros come around, and we're in a tough group with France, with the Netherlands, with Greece. That's a tough group, and it's going to be very difficult to finish in the top two from that. And there's only another 3, I think, that qualify outside of them, 2 up 2 from the 20 groups. So there's 20 there, and then 3, and obviously Germany's hosts to make up the 24. So it's going to be very, very difficult to come out of that. And it's another campaign without qualifying. So I don't want to get to the stage where we're used to not qualifying again. We need to get. That's why we brought in Trapattoni. He got us qualified in 2012. That's why we brought in Martin O'Neill. He got us qualified in 2016. And now it could be another 8 years. You know, and it might be 10 years, because the next one after 2024 is 2026. That'll be 10 years. And then what that also brings, and we're talking about funding, I'm talking about money a little bit earlier with Reading. If the FAI ain't generating the money because you're not at the big tournaments, you know, then you're relying on your home games and, you know, filling the stadium and sponsorship, and then that can impact what you're trying to do at international level as well. So it's good to see that he's trying to play a different way, and it's good to see it's starting to get progress from that. But we need to start qualifying, and we need to start qualifying soon.
Ray,
just one last. Sorry. One last question. Sorry, I just, while I've got you here, Ray, I just have to ask about the late great Jack Charlton. What in a very short, what was he like?
Well, it'd be very hard to sum up Jack in a short period of time. But look at his influence with the international team to get us to, you know, 2 World Cups, 1 European Champions. And if you looked at every campaign we were in, we were either first or second in every competition that we went into. I mean, we missed out in '92 for the Euros without losing a game.
Yeah,
we drew England twice.
We've lost Ray temporarily again. Hopefully he'll come back soon.
Yeah, sorry, Mike.
Yeah, Johnny, I'm just going to finish off the Irish connection at Reading. Going to ask Ray about that. Players like Kevin Doyle, Stephen Hunt, etc. So we'll just wait for Ray to come back. One final question, but it's been fantastic to speak to him. Isn't it? Such an insight. So fingers crossed he comes back, because I want to ask him this last question about the Irish players at Reading. And look, wouldn't it be great if Reading could sort of repeat what they did? You know, I think Brian McDermott was talking about it, wasn't he? You know, we got Kevin Doyle from Cork City, wasn't it?
Yeah, shame.
And Steve Copper, when we had him on, he said he went over there and he couldn't see what the fuss was about. And then, you know, late in the game, I think Kevin Doyle scored, you know, a very late goal.
Yeah.
And the way he kind of crafted that goal, Steve Coppell was describing it. I think it was Steve Coppell or Brian McDermott, one of the two. And here comes Ray. I'm going to ask him.
Yeah.
So here he comes now, hopefully.
Hello again.
Oh, Ray.
Done my head in this.
No, that's okay, Ray. We're glad you came back. I've got one final question for you. you're talking about Jack Charlton and the Irish team. Obviously, Reading, after you left, recruitment wise, did really well, bringing in players like Kevin Doyle, Stephen Hunt, Shane Long. You must have been pleased to not only see the Irish players doing so well, but also it's a really good example of recruitment, of how to do recruitment well. I mean, what did you make of players coming through like your Kevin Doyles and your Stephen Hunts?
Well, they done brilliantly for Reading, didn't they? They had a fabulous career at the club. Shane Long was different class as well, wasn't he? And I think whenever I spoke to the boys, whenever I see them going over to do island matches, there was always a pride. They really enjoy playing for the club. They had a fantastic time there. They all speak very highly about being there. And it's opportunity. I spoke about this quite early on, Mark, about it. It's when you got an opportunity, you've got to seize it. And it's up to you. It's up to you, the player. It's your chance. No one else can do it for you. You've got to do it. You've got to do it for yourself. And I think every player that you mentioned there did what they had to do at Reading to make themselves successful, and they were very good at it. And they've got a great rapport with the fans. Even now, I'm sure when they go back there, they'll be well respected and
definitely
open arms as they turned up to come and watch games. I think Stephen's he's an agent now, so you could maybe get onto him to try and bring in one or two players to the club to try and help out. But every club, it doesn't matter what club you're at, it's about recruitment. You've got to get your recruitment policy right. And you need people out there that know what the club's about, the type of player that would settle into a club. I think just buying someone for 100 million doesn't going to make them a good player for you. Might be a good player worldwide, but coming into your club, can he fit into the style of football that you're playing? How is he going to fit in with the other players at the club? What's his attitude like? These are things that you've got to find out before you just make that big decision. And it doesn't matter if you're buying them for 10 grand or 100 million. They're the things that you have to look for and make sure you get that as best you can. It's always still a gamble. Don't get me wrong. It's still a gamble because you don't know how they're going to fare. And, they might pick up an injury. They might get married. They might do something. They might have a child or whatever. And then that impacts them. All these things you can't factor in. But you still can do your due diligence as far as looking at the right players. Looking at your club, what do we need? What do we need? What do Reading need right now to improve them? That's what you've got to be looking at. I'm sure behind the scenes, all the coaching staff and all the recruiters that go out there and all the scouts that go out looking at players are doing that. And you would have like a box ticking thing to say, right, we're looking for a midfield or box to box or tackler or whatever the case may be. They're the things you'd be looking at to bring in. But hopefully you're utilising the Irish scene. I think Ireland at the moment, because they're not sending kids over as early at 16, 17, you're actually going to get the more mature player at 18, 19, because they would probably have played in the Irish league. So they're used to playing in a men's league, and that will toughen them up a little bit for when they come over to England. And I think it'll be beneficial for them doing that. But all I can say is, as far as Reading's concerned, it's still a club that's very much part of my history, very much part of what I am as a footballer and what I did as a footballer. As I say, I wish I went there a bit earlier and the Reading fans actually seen me maybe when I was a little bit younger, a little bit fresher, and maybe in a bit better goal scoring form instead of the one that I got. Only one goal. I'm really embarrassed by that. I've got to be honest with you. I'd like to think, though, I made a few goals as well. Don't forget, it was another lad there. Do you remember Massa?
Oh, yeah, geez. Yeah.
There's another player that could have done better. Mass had great ability, He was unbelievable. But I just don't know. He was a weird lad. Great lad, funny lad. But what a waste. He was a waste. He could have been so much better than he turned out to be at the club. But I just wish Reading every success. I hope the problems that they've got when it comes to the financial things are sorted out quickly, because it's not good to have that hanging over the manager, the players, the staff at the club, and particularly the fans. And the quicker that's resolved, the better. And that the recruitment policy for the summer is good. Get in the right players, start the campaign next season on a positive note. And as we've seen with other clubs that are currently up in the top 6 of the championship, that you can get there. But don't overstretch yourself because a lot of them do it financially, and then it hurts you 3-4 years down the line because you don't make it to the promised land of the Premier League, and you've overpaid players, or your staff's much bigger than it should be, and then that's when financially you can have some problems.
Yeah, well, Ray, it's been absolutely brilliant to speak to you. Thanks ever so much for joining us. Really appreciate it.
Thanks so much, Ray.
Boys, Mark, Jonathan, just an apology. I am not technically very good. I haven't got a clue why this thing's been keep cutting out. I can assure you, I have not touched the computer other than try to get you boys back on. But it's been a real pleasure to come and speak about Reading. As I say, I wish you all the success in the future, lads, and I hope the club goes from strength to strength.
Thanks so much, Ray.
Thank you, Ray. Really appreciate you coming on.
Take care, Ray. Thank you.
Thank you.